Detective Comics 1076. Ram V writing with Jason Sean Alexander on the art. Which is a new name to me. I don't recognize. Well,
No?
I know Jason Alexander, who plays George Costanza.
Yes.
But pretty sure that's not the same guy.
Yes.
Just
No.
sneaking suspicion.
What if they're related, though? Like second cousins.
Yeah. He could be his son for all we know.
Yeah?
This could be Jason Jr.
JJ?
Yeah, JJ, yeah, why not?
Just straight out of the gate, I'm trying to praise this book as much as I can, so as many eyes can get on it, because I really enjoyed the first part. Because on the credits page, they call this like the next part. They call it intermezzo, which I'm sure in the opera is the break or whatever. However, I feel like Ram B has ramped it up with the story in this one by shifting the perspective from just being about Bruce and Batman to Gotham as a whole. It's really opened up his story about the Orgums and what they want to do to Gotham and what that's going to mean for other people, not just Bruce. And I was not shocked because I was already enjoying it, but how much I liked the story in this book, I was not ready for.
Yeah, it's very good. I've been enjoying this part of the overall saga even more than the first part. Now that the pieces are in play, I really enjoyed the Batman being taken over and sort of try to cling on to his humanity by going to all these places in his memory. Last issue, this issue, he's held captive by the Orgums and Arzen specifically, and he's basically just waiting to be hanged. Like that's what's happening here. And one of the things that we've been talking about since the start of this run is that Batman doesn't have Alfred, so maybe he's leaning on Gordon a little bit more for that, and it very much the people around him. So I think it is a very wise narrative choice to switch to. It's actually, funnily enough, and it's almost like Ram V, and I'm not saying he is, but it's almost like he's kind of throwing shade on how crappy the other stuff is right now by having it shift to Selina. And there's one throwaway reference to, we're not in great terms right now, and that's the only reference you get to the whole Batman Catwoman war that's going on, because it shifts to her, and she's the one taking it upon herself to put a team together to try and save Batman. When she finds out from some mystery person in a cloak who works with the Orgums,
who just like a ninja,
it's like a ninja.
Yeah.
We could theorize maybe who that is in a bit, but she finds out that Batman's going to be hanged and immediately sort of starts springing into action. The art here, by the way, is fantastic. See when she comes into like her room and she's in her black dress and this ninja's waiting for her. There's a really simple thing in the art here that I really liked, where it goes into like silhouette, where it's just kind of like this orange background, and it's like she's blocking a kick or something, right? But they're just in silhouette, so they're just pitch black, and behind them's this orange background. What I really liked is that in the very next panel, it flips it, and now the background is pitch black, and they're kind of got the orangey coloring, sort of, still kind of in a like cutout form, but the swapping of the colors gave it this real sense of like, I don't know, like, do you know, like if you watch like a kung fu movie and like they'll throw a punch and block and they'll sort of pause when they do that, and then there'll be a beat and then they'll throw the second punch? That's what it felt like to me. It felt like, punch, block, pause, punch, block, pause. It gave it this momentum in a weird way, even though I'm saying it gave me
yeah, there you
go.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's like a pacing to it, right? So it makes it feel, even though like it's all still art, it gives it a flow and like a sense of like cinematography, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I felt like crunch from it. It was really nice. We'll talk more about that in a bit though. So she goes on this mission to build a team, and she goes to Jim Gordon and says, "Hey, our mutual friend's in trouble." And there's a bit of banter here about like, she calls him commissioner, and he's like, I've not been commissioner for ages. And she's like, yeah, but that's not going to stop you, is it? And he's like, well, once a lawman, always a lawman. And basically he's like, hey, right now it's just us, but I'm going to try and put a team together to save him. And I love this idea, because we've been talking so much about the city protecting Batman, that now we're actually getting to this sort of the heart of the story, which is the people that he's built up around him who are going to be the ones to actually save him. And that's actually kind of beautiful. It gives it a lot of heart in a way that I think some people who write Batman forget to put that in it.
Well, yeah, there's the Bat family. We talk about the Bat family so often, but here it's going even beyond the family to like not his acquaintances, but like they are the people he's relied on within the city that just know him as Batman.
It's interesting that it's going. Obviously, Gordon's the closest. Well, maybe Selina technically, but right, they're the two closest to him. But then it seems to be like the rest of this issue, the main story seems to be introducing the other members, at least so far. There might be more next time. But we get Azrael introduced for the purpose of like he's probably going to be recruited into this, right? Gordon goes to Montoya, who is like, no, I can't really help you, Jim, and he's like, I just want you to be aware, and if there's like any trouble coming, I want you to warn me, and at least if you're not going to get involved too heavily, at least you're asking the right questions. And the word questions, Baldy, they love to do that with Montoya now. They love to emphasize the word question. And I love the art in those pages as well. As the art here is really good. I actually really like the art in this.
It's so you said we'll talk about the art in a minute, but what I like here is like there's a moodiness to it that makes it feel like a grittiness that wasn't there before. Like everything before this was kind of a little bit more opulent and kind of like the Orgums themselves. Well, here it's because it's following Catwoman.
Well, not everything, because
it's grittier.
Because the last couple issues were different again, right? So there was like the art up until that point, and then these last couple issues with Batman kind of being infected with the asthma, that changed style, and then we've changed style again to shift to this. Yeah. And obviously, this might just be a scheduling thing, especially since this is double shipping for a couple of months. But it's it kind of works out in the sense that because we have switched perspective. It wouldn't surprise me if we return to either the original artist or even Francavilla after we're done with this, intermission period where it's focusing on Selina and the other characters, who then obviously she then goes to Ivy and she wants her to make her something, which is interesting because it doesn't sound like Gordon's going to go on the mission with Selina, and it doesn't sound like Ivy's going to go on the mission with her. So I wonder if she's getting help from all these people, but the actual people she maybe takes in for the fight might end up being the Bat family themselves. I mean, we'll see where that goes.
It definitely feels like Ocean's 11 when she's assembling the people. We just don't know who these people are yet, right? Yeah. We just know it's going to have something to do with Ivy. She's making her something. And, when Gordon goes to talk to Montoya, almost setting that edge, of the question. So, But yeah, I really liked all those pages. The page where Selina's talking to Gordon and they're in that little dive bar. There's this spot where they're talking and there's just straight chaos going around them, right? There's like this big bar brawl going and it's almost providing cover, and it's kind of like what's going on in the city in and of itself, right? To where there's so much chaos going on, they're not being noticed, and that Selina's going to use this to her advantage.
Yeah, and we also have early on, like we get a little bit of because all this setup is actually 3 days in the past. The book actually starts in what is currently present day, which is, Arzin talking to Bruce and coming in and saying, "Hey, the fact that you're even holding on this long is actually very impressive. Most people are gone pretty instantly, but because you're holding on, the asthma's going through your system and it's going to be taking every part of you." And we get this like couple of pages sort of inside Bruce's head of seemingly like a lot of the small memories that are inconsequential have already been taken, and a lot of it's like sort of like bathed in like it's all colored red, but the part that isn't is Alfred hugging young Bruce, and it's like that's like the most important memory he has, right? Yeah. Which I actually kind of love. I love that it's not the death of the parents. It's Alfred holding him that's like been spotlighted here as the main thing that he's going to lose.
Yeah, and that also goes with the backup from last time too, where we got the Bat Demon taking Bruce being juxtaposed with the stuff that Alfred was doing.
Well, on the second page of this, we get the big creature coming in and what seems to be the bat creature that's representing sort of Bruce's defense system is trying to hold it off while young Bruce is still being held by Alfred. It's a really Like,
Yep.
I feel like if anything, this visual makes it just so clear what was happening last issue in Bruce's head. We just didn't have all the pieces yet. But this is like, no, he's fighting off these things being taken from him, and he was going to all those places to rekindle those memories, to hold on to them in some form. And the one that's keeping him clinging is the memory of Alfred, and it's like, it's all really well done. And this image of his bat trying to face off against this bigger creature is just so good.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about when Gordon goes to talk to Montoya, right, and about the asthma in of itself. He talks about how there's really being two Gothams built right now, and that like from what we know, right, with what Arzin had just told Bruce about how the asthma takes the people quicker, and how that was being used on the homeless population, right, in Gotham. And so Gordon points out to Montoya, like, there's these two Gothams being built right now where the people up in the high offices and high apartments are being able to steer clear of these people that have been corrupted by the asthma. So we're almost like,
well, it's not just that. I don't think it's the asthma though. They mentioned the reality engine. It was the broadcast. It's the broadcast that the women did that seems to have affected the population. I don't think they've affected. I mean, obviously they had the homeless people down the sewers and that, right? They had them, and they've probably got the asthma. That's what I was going to
get to. In conjunction with the reality engine, right? It's creating this thing about how dangerous the lower people of Gotham are, right? And everything that the organs are doing are creating that divide even more. So it's just feeding the reality engine, and so I really like that that's Gordon and Montoya talking about that. These two people that are supposed to, protect all of Gotham, right? Talking about, the division that's going on and what's been there. So,
part of what makes this so strong is that this is legitimately what politicians and political parties try and do with their propaganda. They try and create these divides and sort of feed one group against the other to create conflict to get results for themselves. So the idea that Ram V is sort of taking that and turning it up to 11 with these characters who are directly, like, effectively brainwashing people, like in a very literal sense in this case, is really good stuff. It gives it all this weight because you can sort of like see what all of it's representing in the real world. All of it has some kind of analogy that it's going for, which is really good. But yeah, I like the art is really nice throughout. Like I'd never heard of this artist, and I feel like it fits the mood of everything so well. The small moments of action that are there are very good. It's not a very action heavy, issue, of course. It's not that type, but this moody like building of the team and the idea that the people around Batman are the ones that are going to have to come and save him now is, all he has to do is mentally hold on. And they do a little bit of that, Batman's truly special because he's still talking. He's still fighting it enough to verbally talk back. And Arzen's like, wait, how are you even still talking? Like, this is madness, this. As far as who the leaker is, the ninja that comes and tells Selina what's going on, like, part of me thought that could maybe be Arzen himself, because obviously we know he said something last issue about how, the Batman has to be hanged, but maybe Bruce Wayne can still be saved. Now, we know that scene at the start of this issue where he's talking to Bruce is 3 days after everything else, so maybe when he says, I've done everything I can, maybe he's referring to going to talk to Selina. It's the only, that seems reasonable enough, but I don't know. It could be something else as well.
Yeah, whoever it is, they really focus on the green eyes, right? There with Selina. It says, who he is behind the mask, right? I don't know who within the Orgum Inner Circle would do that, right? Except for Arzen, because of what we, found out in the last one where he considers Bruce a friend, right? So, but it is a mystery because we still have, Ra's at play in his league, right? Because of his ties to the Orgums and Arzen's history and all of that type of stuff too. So Wouldn't surprise me if it's also someone from that side of things that's just in the inner circle. But it's probably the obvious.
Yeah.
Right?
Also, that very first panel of this book is gorgeous. It's the old Arkham ruins, and it's just this sort of black silhouette almost against the moonlight of whatever's left of Arkham, and it just looks spooky. It's got this atmosphere to it. It just sets you right up for the tone of the book, and everything between this feeling like it's a dark world where everyone's getting a bit more violent, and like the divide is like spreading, and the chaos is spreading. It's making me think of Metropolis, not Superman, the movie from 1927. It's making me think of season 3 of Twin Peaks. And I know these are references that you might not be getting as much, but like this idea of these seeds of disruption and unrest are being spread to create chaos is the tone this gave me was making me think of those two things. So yeah, there's like a sadness, a disease sadness spreading throughout the city of Gotham. And the good people that are left are going to have to try and fight it and fix it and like beat it back, and that's exciting.
Well, and it's making, and Ramvy's done a very good job of making this feel like a Gotham-centric event, right? And there's not a bunch of tie-ins. However, this shifting to focus on Gordon and Selena, and then Azrael popping up, and Ivy, and all these other characters, right? It makes it feel very Gotham-specific and a bigger story than that's actually being told. And I really like that.
It's worth mentioning as well that he went out of his way to, obviously Gordon's been a recurring character in this detective run, and even with Selena, he went out of his way to have Selena pop in for those 2 issues relatively recently. Remember where she sort of saved him from in the water? And you might argue it doesn't need to do that because, hey, it's a Batman comic and Selena Kyle might show up. Absolutely. But it is a good example of writing in an ongoing book like this to establish that certain characters are a part of your ongoing story. Like, I'm not saying Selena Kyle needs to be introduced to the audience so we all understand who she is when she shows up, but it feels like, she's not just popping up out of nowhere when she does show up. It's already established that she is part of this story in some way. He did that sort of heart-to-heart between them those however many issues ago to seed the fact that she is around, she's going to be a part of this. So when she pops up here, you can think about everything going on in the other book, but you're not really. You're thinking back to the last time she was in this story, and that time was this more heartfelt kind of exchange where it felt like two people who still very much loved each other, but obviously there's a lot of, shaky stuff around it, but...
Yeah, it definitely feels way more informed by his Catwoman run and what their relationship was there than it does anything else that's been going on. Because that's what I thought of, right? And there'll be more reasons why that, comes in with when we touch on the backups and whatnot. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely, him seeding these things throughout. It's just good storytelling.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I was saying the same thing. I just reviewed the final episode of Gen V, and there's one or two smaller characters from The Boys in the finale, but both of them had been set up in the show earlier in the season, so it didn't just feel like a cheap out of nowhere, here's a character from The Boys. It's like, no, it established that they were a character in this show, so if you hadn't seen The Boys, you'd still have some frame of reference for why it's, why it's a bigger deal these characters are here and possibly in danger and that kind of thing. And I'm feeling the exact same thing with this. Like, Ram V set up Selena Kyle as a character in this run, and that's smart.
And she's already rescued Batman once, right?
Yeah,
so of course she's gonna. Yeah,
that was
gonna try to do it again.
Yeah, that was like a really simple version of saving, which is just grabbing him before he drowns. Whereas this is a lot more complex. This is a heist. Let's just put it. She actually says that to someone later on. This is a heist, which is, to be fair, if she's an expert at anything, it's a heist.
It's right. She's great at stealing, including Batman's heart. Yeah, so
she knows her stuff.
But it's just Ram V's Gotham is one that I really like. Like we talk about these cities becoming characters throughout comics, but like between this and his Catwoman run, it feels like a city that I've been to. And that's really strong storytelling. Yeah.
And honestly, that second last page of the story where you see Catwoman, because she's not been in costume the whole issue, she's been just Selena Kyle.
Yeah.
that first panel of her in costume, like sort of crouched down, surrounded by like the the various vines and stuff. I love how deep the black is on that outfit. It looks really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I have any critique, is I'll just say it ended very suddenly, where I'm like, oh, it's already over.
Yes.
I was kind of hoping that because it was an extra issue that maybe they were going to do a thing where it got all the backup space as well, but
Yeah.
that's what it is.
I didn't expect there to be so many backups.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, there's technically 3, although the last one's only 2 pages, so it's not like it's extending the length that much. But it's definitely a bit longer than they have been, though, right? This is more like the Action Comics issues recently.
Yeah, because this was how many pages? I have 45 on here.
Yeah. So very strange. I will confess. So there's 3 backups. I read 2 of them. I didn't read the first one because.
Okay.
Obviously, I like the idea of reading a Montoya story where she puts the question mask on and stuff. I sort of skimmed it and saw that, but I hated the art so much that I just didn't want to read it.
The art is not bad. It's just it needs a better inker.
Maybe
because
it looks so flat and not in a way that it's not like a Francavilla flat where it's like really stylish looking. It just looks.
Yeah, because Francovilla's flat, but there's depth to it at the same time because he plays the shadows.
Yeah.
Here, there's not a lot of that. But yeah, so basically, in this is Montoya gets a call from this mom saying that her husband's been up to something, but she doesn't know when because he's always around. And so this leads to Montoya donning the mask because, people start to be like, you used to be a cop that asked questions, right? And there's just the reoccurring theme of asking questions. And so Montoya starts wondering to herself, well, what are the ethics of the police commissioner also being a vigilante, right? Because now we're getting into some serious things, but they're kind of, she talks to some of these, smaller cops in the police station, like kind of the patrol guys and, smaller detectives, and they're like, yeah, no, it's airtight. Like, he says where he said he's been, we really can't prove anything. The wife dropped off this tape, but that she says are screams that he recorded of these murders that he's committing, but they can't trace them. They can't place them. And he claims they're from, his favorite horror movies. And Montoya's like, that's creepy, but it's not illegal, right? Like, so at the same time, she's, wondering all this. She's playing with the Rubik's Cube. And she pulls the question gear out of this drawer, and she's like, look, I have this, right? I shouldn't do it, but there's also a bottle of booze, which I also shouldn't do. So really, if I'm trying to be my true self, I mean, is it the mask or the bottle? Which then cuts to her with the get up on chasing this guy, following him, where she follows him through, and this is where the art really looks good because it plays with the colors. There's a magenta, a blue, and a green, and they kind of they're spread around the panels that it creates a sense of flow, for the city. And they're following this guy whose name is Connor Tatar, and he works in a textile factory. He works on the machines, Connor. Right? He works at 2 grocery stores. So the only screams from those, there was no screams coming from a grocery store. So where else could he? And it ends up question ends up at a elementary school that's all abandoned, and that's where he is. And so there's a struggle. He wants to know how she figured it out, and she's like, well, this screams to cover screams. So he would go in underneath this school during recess when the kids were being loud, and that's where he would commit his murders. He says the violence is easy, call and response, question and answer. And Montoya proceeds to beat the stuffing out of this guy with the Rubik's Cube that she's been carrying. And so she locks him in, calls the police, and then goes and keeps an eye on the wife. And at the end, it ends with, the first question precedes knowledge. It precedes ethic. It simply is. Meaning, like, it's just the question. There is no ethics to being the question for her. It's just something that sometimes she has to do. It's kind of baked into who she is. And it ends with her letting out a scream as she takes the mask off, which goes also into the name of the story, which is called The Question and the Scream. So the artist was Christopher Mitten, which as the story goes, there tends to be more depth, but like, you can't just draw the question with no face, right? There's got to be some kind of definition there, so it just doesn't look like a blank, right? And that's my kind of big problem as the action sequences get going is, you know, the layouts are well done. It's just there's not enough detail in here, you know, and it's a little bit too flat. But then this last page, it's got, you know, Gotham with the, you know, the blue and magenta and the green, multiple blimps through the air. There's just like a sense there. So it was a pretty good read for a Montoya story, though. Like, again, Dan Waters and Ram V really working together to establish this side of Gotham, almost in a Gothic sense too. So
yeah,
but definitely, if you have it, you should go back and maybe check it out when you have some time.
Yeah, then the next backup was an Azrael story. He apparently has been working with a couple of other people, Father Valet and Vengeance, which is a very interesting mix of characters.
Yes. So Father Valet came from Ramby's Catwoman run.
Yeah.
Right. And then Vengeance was from the Tynan Joker?
Yeah, it was the Joker and Jim Gordon story Vengeance was in. Yeah, very interesting. And they're looking for Venom. It seems like Vengeance is she's basically trying to kick the addiction, or she's suffering withdrawal symptoms, so Valet is trying to help her. And they go after these guys that might have it, but they're basically just zombies at this point. And it's unsuccessful, or at least as at first. Azrael shows up to help them fight, though. And that's kind of that. It's kind of like what he's up to. It's a very interesting thing. I wonder if those relationships lead anywhere in the future. They might.
Yeah.
But the big ending, though, is that Azrael's sort of thinking like, oh, something's like missing in Gotham. Something's been taken from the city, and what could that be? And he then looks at his old Batman uniform and says, "Yes, of course." And it's a very good. Like final page that the art on the Batman outfit that's in like a dusty old like moody like closet or whatever it is behind all these cables does look quite good. It's interesting because one of the things we didn't mention too much in the main story is the idea that they're trying to like ruin the symbol of Batman. Like, it's one thing to like break him or break Bruce Wayne, but it's like, no, if you sort of like take away what that symbol means to the city, then the city's for the taking. The city can be shaped in however they want it. So be very interested to see if it's not so much that Azrael's going to be on the team to help save Bruce Wayne. Maybe he's just going to go about being Batman whilst the others are trying to save him. That's entirely possible.
I mean, that's kind of his gig, right? Like, Batman's out of commission. Azrael shows up in the armor. Which I like that this was Dan Waters too, because it continues that Azrael story that we've had. We got Ten-Eyed Man also running around somewhere. So again, these weird sections of Gotham coming together.
And this was Liam Sharp on art, by the way, so it's no surprise that final page looked particularly good. I mean, all of it looked fine, don't get me wrong, it was a solid looking comic, but I felt like the coloring and the inks were especially good in that last page. Yeah.
Well, and that's where it confused me, because it felt like Liam Sharp in parts, but in other parts it didn't. So that last page is very Liam Sharp. The last two pages, in fact, there's a lot of heavy shadow and like that. But in some of the other pages, like Azrael really pops with the red cowl and like the goldish kind of armor, where it didn't feel like Liam Sharp.
Well, it's interesting because he colored it himself, and I agree, it looks a little bit different to what he usually colors. And I wonder if he was intentionally going for a different vibe than he usually does. I can definitely recognize the line work though as Liam Sharp, and I think maybe it may have been a decision to simply make that final page pop in a way where it's like, because everything else is fairly vivid, relatively speaking, and even on that final page, the back of Azrael is the coloring of the rest of the book, but the box that he's looking at, which has got the Batman outfit in it, has got the different coloring. It looks it's very, very different, and maybe that's kind of the point, is that it feels like, oh, we're looking at a completely different level of thing now. So I don't know.
For sure. But yeah, no, I really like that. Again, I wasn't expecting an Azrael story in here as one of the backups.
No. And I thought I was done, and then I was like, wait, is this another thing after this? And it's only 2 pages, but Dr. Hurt apparently is going to be rearing his ugly head soon.
This whole time, I'm like, I recognize that little domino mask. And then him talking about summoning and what that means, and we get like a linguistics lesson about where the word comes from and what it means and how it's something that was put into place. Like a summoning can be something that was put into place ages ago and now is coming to fruition. And I'm like, why does this guy look familiar? And then at the end, when he says, a whole lot of hurt, and you look over, and I was like, oh my God, it's Dr. Hurt from Batman R.I.P. And I'm like, okay, so what's going on here? Is this more seeding for later? Is this, does he have something to do with the organs? But yeah.
I don't know if it's saying this got something to do with the organs, but he seems to have plans. He seems to think that Bruce Wayne's actually about to die. And if Batman's actually going to die, then whatever concoction he's got brewing is he's going to benefit from that. So, I'm always a bit two-minded on Dr. Hurt as a character. Some of the larger concepts of like him, like we've got this ancestor of Bruce Wayne who's also called Thomas Wayne, and like there's a lot of Morrison went a bit crazy with Dr. Hurt, and I feel like I'm conflicted. I am very curious about the possibility of what he might be used for in this run.
So yeah, when I think of Dr. Hurt, I think of someone that because in the original story that Morrison based it on, he was a doctor that used this machine to try to replicate Batman, right? And to me, in the hands of Ram V, that's someone that's also been poisoned by the idea of Batman. And because he's not Bruce, and he doesn't have that love from Alfred that we've seen to form him, we get somebody like Dr. Hurt, right? From the idea of being, from an idea of a poisoned idea of Batman. And so at least that's what I'm taking from that page, because he's talking about a summoning and something that's a long time coming. So but
notably, this is Ram V that wrote this. He also did the art, actually, funnily enough, but it's only 2 pages.
No, he didn't do the art, did he?
Yeah, story and art, Ram V.
Oh shoot! I just assumed the second name was it's the lettering. I'm not a good reader. Wow, good for Ram V.
Yeah, there you go. Is this the first taste of Ram V art that I can remember?
I think so. Yeah. I think so.
It's very moody. It's very shadowy. I'm trying to think of someone to compare it to. It's got I almost want to say like David Mack a little bit. What about that?
A little bit. There was an artist that worked on one of the Return of Bruce Wayne books too.
It's certainly not bad though, as Ram V's art. So I'm intrigued by that. But I think the fact that Ram V wrote this little 2-page at the end himself does suggest to me that that he's got plans for Dr. Hurt to factor into the run. If not during this arc, then certainly maybe whatever arc follows the current one. So interesting to see different people sort of all react to this like potential Batman being hanged, which obviously is not going to happen, at least not completely literal anyway.
At least maybe not Bruce getting hanged, but the idea of Batman, I can definitely see them trying to kill an idea.
Azrael's going to take the hit. He's going to be hanged.
I wouldn't be surprised. He kind of wants to be a martyr.
He's the fall guy.
Yeah. I'm giving this a 9. I really enjoyed this issue.
I don't know if I'll go quite as high as that, but I do really like the main story. I think the backups that I read are interesting, if not necessarily as anywhere nearly as good as the main story. But I think it's probably still a good 8.5 from me on this one. But yeah, very good. Ram V's run continues to bear fruit. So
By the way, that artist I was trying to think of is Fraser Irving.
Okay, I know
Yeah.
that name. Yes,
Yep.
very good.
So there we go. Found it.